Narcissists are wild, They constantly, I used to think that my in-laws were just used to having a chaotic life where they were constantly moving to different countries for their job. They were constantly moving around. It's almost like they need chaos after a while, like 20 plus years of moving from country to country, city to city, just constantly moving around every few months, every few years. You would think that those people would get used to that kind of lifestyle where you don't really have a home. You just kind of move around and meet new people. And it's so annoying to be dealing with such people when you lived in the same area your whole life, and you didn't move around like that. And you like peace, you like your peace, you like to be calm. And you have these people that constantly seem to need new stimulation, new things going on around them in order to feel good. They don't want to be sitting idle. They get bored. They get lonely. They start, messing with people, causing problems, rattling cages. And when I was living with my in-laws, man, it was bad. Early on, they were pretty supportive. And honestly, I think it's because I brought in a lot of new things into their life. Getting married to their daughter and stuff, and being around them and doing things. But over time, I started to realize like I had to walk on eggshells, that they would flare up and get easily offended, that they would start being extremely controlling about every little thing in the house. Like, oh, I can't even use the sink, or I can't even open the garage door because I broke it last time, even though I wasn't even living there when the garage broke. I literally wasn't even living there for months. I left for a few months because of their toxic crap. And during that time, their garage broke. And, they open the garage every single day, numerous times to go in and out. But as soon as one time I opened the garage, the mother-in-law accused me of breaking the garage last time, even though I wasn't even there. Or like I couldn't even use the garbage disposal, and I couldn't even use the sprayer in the sink. And anytime I tried to do anything, like, oh, I was doing it wrong, and it was crazy. And eventually I started realizing, hey, I have to start documenting some of this stuff because I'm probably going to need it later. These people are being very abusive, controlling, and I don't want to live here, but I kind of have to for the time being. At least I thought I did. And I started documenting it every time. And a lot of times they would actually schedule the abuse. Like they would have a meeting where you go and sit at the table, and then they come and berate you about some, invented problem, that they have with you, or changing the house rules, rearranging the furniture. God, just constantly rearranging the furniture, constantly making up rules, constantly inventing problems. And a lot of times they would stupidly schedule it so I could literally just sit there and record, their toxic behavior, because as soon as you try to criticize them or have an opinion or be like, you're crossing boundaries, like literally telling me that I shouldn't be looking at my phone or using my phone. The mother-in-law just one day had the idea that people shouldn't be using their phones. So it's like, you got to put your phone away. It's like working at a freaking job, just these, and like, like I remember, I was telling her to get a life, do something with herself, and she lost it. But like, just like constantly, like to the point where like they would text me, about my kid, like every single day at the same exact time. They made it their routine to screw with me. And, I knew if I responded any to those text messages, they would see it as a slight or get offended. So I would just ignore it, And over time I learned, like, I can't talk to these people. I can't reason with these people. So I just, it's called gray stoning. It's where you're really quiet and you don't talk. And because you realize like anything you say or do, they're going to walk all over you anyway. So you just got to say yes, okay, sure. Just acknowledge them and that's it. So that they move on with their day without attacking you. And it was bad, man. It was bad. And eventually, I was like, eventually the dad, the father-in-law snapped because, he was saying I'm negligent and blah, blah, blah. And, nobody agreed with him. So he like started spazzing out and running around and going to his brother's house and then coming back. And then he doubled down after that and started messing with me some more, texting me every morning, just poking and prodding at me all the time and just like hyper fixating on my kid. And eventually I snapped because I was like, no, we're not going to do that thing that you want to do. And, they wouldn't take no for an answer. And I was like, I'm not going to live like this where I can't raise my kid in this environment. I can't, make decisions. I have to walk on eggshells. And they're punishing me, a freaking adult, like I'm a child all the time. The mother-in-law likes labeling people as like bipolar or autistic so that, she feels better about herself and has a reason to control people and, can place, redirect blame. Like, oh, if I get mad at them for crossing huge boundaries and not taking no for an answer, and then I get mad after, constantly being harassed about crap and poked and prodded for weeks at a time, then oh no, I'm bipolar. I need to, I need to take pills. Yeah, wild shit. It's like and eventually, I was like, I want the hell out of here. This isn't right, And luckily, it was pretty easy. All I had to do was talk back to them. Because, they walked all over me. They were like, the father-in-law would like just stand over me and hover over me and just glare at me. And I'd be sitting on the couch, with my kid running around, and he would just come up to me and just like stare over me and glare at me and shit. And I would just have to sit there like, oh, most of the time I wasn't even on my phone. What's funny is the father-in-law is addicted to sitting on the couch with his thumb up his ass, playing on his phone all day, twiddling his thumb. The only time like I'm doing a similar thing is so that I don't have to talk to them, So I'll just play on my phone, and a lot of times I'm not even doing anything. I'm just sitting there looking at my phone, waiting for them to go away. Because when you create content, when you're a content creator, a lot of times you actually don't consume as much content because you kind of know like, oh, it's you're just consuming other people's bullshit all day. But like, I'd rather be creating my own content sometimes, But yeah, it was bad, and now. It's I mean, I'm still stressed out about it because I'm still in the process of moving a lot of things and trying to get situated with my wife and kid and stuff out of there. But like, yeah, like it had to end. It had to end. It was. I was like, I'm not going to raise my kid in this environment where I've got these in-laws walking all over me like thinking that I owe them something. And like, it was terrible. Anytime I would try to defend myself or stand up for myself, I would immediately get punished. Like, they were saying like, oh, I don't, the mother-in-law was like, I don't know if you can afford my kid. And I was like, I make more than her. I make several times more than her. And the next thing like they're trying to make me pay all this rent money and trying to shame me and stuff. And like, so like you can't even stand up for yourself because they'll just try to take it from you. They'll go after it because again, it's about control. Oh, you stand up for yourself. Oh, you need to be medicated. You need to be, more easy to control. And what's funny is the mother-in-law is the problem. The father-in-law is stupid and goes along with it, and he's a dumbass too. But like, Like, I mean, like I remember he tried to teach me how to cook when I first and was calling me son and shit, and like saying that he saw me as family. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's a lot of stuff to be telling me without any of my input on the matter. Like, do I see you as family? Do I actually not know how to cook, or are you just assuming that I'm stupid and need your, lessons on how to cook and shit? And that's just like, I would just go along with it, but it's just like, what the fuck, And yeah, it was like they wanted us to sit at the table every day and entertain them, basically, because the dad wouldn't, tell me anything about himself. What did you do today? Oh, But they got to get all up in my business about what I did that day, and then later on throughout the day, talk to me about it. Again, like I realized pretty early on, like, he wants me to do this to entertain his ass. He wants to be lording over everybody, even though I'm a dad, I have a family, and he wants to undermine me as he's in control of all of us. And I remember so many times, like, he would try to make me feel like, I'm in his debt. Like, I feed you. Like, I buy my own food. Like, you're forcing us to sit at your stupid dinner table. Because it's kind of funny, because the only interaction that they get really with their kids is when they go out to eat, when they sit at the table, when they, have to do something. Like, there's never really a time where they're just like sitting with their kids and actually small talking them, because it always turns into a lecture, or it turns into something about them. So they don't even care about actually communicating with their kids. So, like, the only time they actually get any bonding or memories is when they go out to eat, or they, do some family thing. But besides that, they don't really, talk to each other all that much. Small talk each other. So, I've always been known to be kind of keeping to myself. And, a lot of people that talk about narcissism, a lot of times it's women obsessed with their narcissistic husband or their ex-husband. They're traumatized by them. But, like, I mean, I've been in situations like that, kind of, sort of. But, like, when it's your in-laws, and it's very stereotypical, the horrible mother-in-law, the nightmare mother-in-law. But yeah, it like I said, I started documenting all of this crap as it happened, because it started happening so frequently. And I would say 95% of the time it was the mother-in-law inventing a problem, inventing a rule, and pulling us into it. And I think a lot of times the father-in-law went along with it, or like, the mother-in-law was talking crap about us, and the father-in-law would go along with it. So even though the father-in-law is pretty fucking bad, like, I've noticed that, like, I mean, they both kind of know when they screw up, but again, then they spin it so they don't have to take any accountability. Like, the father-in-law clearly knew that it was over, and he was trying to fix it when I started ranting and raving about how I don't want to be at their house anymore. I want to get the hell out of here. But after the fact, they made it out like it was their idea, that I was acting crazy and bipolar. I want it out of there. I don't like them. But you can't tell them that, because you still have to deal with them. But, like, yeah, it's pretty wild to deal with. So I think everything turned out the way that it needed to, which was me getting the hell out of there. But a lot of people are stuck. Like, if they're like your actual family and you're stuck living with them, and you have to grow up with them, and you end up being like a people pleaser and have all these weird traumas. Like, like I noticed so many things my wife would do. Like if she realized like I was unhappy about like a decision or something she did, she would try to come up with like 50 different reasons to try to turn my mood around, to try to fix it. And it's like, god damn, that's from her traumas dealing with her parents who can't take anything because you're walking on eggshells around them all day. It's like, damn. And I started noticing, so many times she would be doing that to me, telling me what I want to hear, trying to make sure that I don't get mad, and it screws you up. It really does. I mean, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of conflict, a lot of yelling, people standing up for themselves most of the time. And, people staying out of each other's business for the most part. So when you go into these families that are enmeshed and they want to walk all over you and be up all in your business and you have to walk on eggshells, it's terrible, And yeah, it's good to get the hell out of there. Yeah, boys.